Today, let's look at the best exercise for the pike press to handstand. Now, you will see some big extremes in terms of the flexibility and the strength required to do the movement. If you're not so strong, there's going to be a bigger distance between your hands and your feet, and you're going to use a lot more forward lean with the shoulders to pull yourself up. But if you're more flexible, you're going to be better off stacking everything, so have the hands super close to the feet and then press up from there. And ideally, you'd have the best of both. So be able to use the strength when you need it and be able to use the flexibility when you need it. In terms of warm-up, we need to do two things. We need to open up the hamstrings and the calves. Now I'm using a slant board because you can really get into the calves with this. Now I'm going to try and go into the deepest forward fold I can. So bending the elbows, try and take the elbows towards the toes. So I'm lengthening the spine, lengthening the hamstrings and the calves. If you're comfortable in the position, bounces make it more spicy. That will definitely get you deeper, but obviously you need to make sure that you're feeling it in the right place and make sure you don't pull anything. In terms of the handstand, if you have a freestanding version, make sure that's nicely warmed up and that you can open and close the shoulder position. So that's closing the shoulder, that's opening the shoulder. This is super important because we're going to take the feet in this direction and we need to counterbalance that with the hips and the shoulders in the opposite direction. Now, if you're not so strong in the freestanding handstand, we can do that drill against the wall. Now, when we're doing it against the wall, we need to make sure that we turn the hands out. So I've externally rotated the hands. I've kicked up to the wall, trying to make the body one segment from the shoulder to the feet. Take it to the wall and back off again. Notice that I'm pushing up all the time. If it feels too hard, just take the head to the wall and back off. But ideally, the back will be coming on and off and you don't lose any height as you're doing the movement. Then we're going to use the wall to help us open up the back, open up the hips. Because when we come down in that pike position, we really need to take the hips backwards and try and keep the shoulders as strong and stable as possible. So the best way to do that is in that tuck position. So chest to wall position, come down to 90 degrees. So your upper leg is parallel with the floor, and then make sure the shoulders on top of the hands. If that's easy, we can go closer to the wall. But what we don't want to happen is this. We don't want the shoulders here. For this exercise, you want to be pushing the shoulders up and towards the wall as best you can. Trying to keep the legs together, trying to keep the upper leg parallel with the floor, so making sure it's there. Because then the femur is going to push the hips in that direction as the shoulders push in that direction. Then we're going to start to play with the straight leg position. So I'm going to come into a pike position with the feet against the wall. I'm going to walk the butt backwards, but try and walk the belly this way. So I'm trying to get into an anterior tilt, not rounded anterior there, trying to get as close to the wall with my head, my shoulders in that deep pike position. Then I'm going to extend the arms and sit up as best I can. Trying to be tall, not rounding the low back in any way. Trying to arch it, if anything, while lengthening as high as I can in that position. Then I'm going to place the hands down in line with the hips and flip over and replicate the position upside down. So shoulders on top of hands. Try and push my shoulders towards the wall, and I'm trying to have my legs parallel with the floor. Now with this one and the tuck one, you're probably going to want to set up a video from the side or have someone watch you and give you some feedback on your position. Next, I'm going to warm up the tuck and the 7 handstand. So ideally freestanding, straight position, come down to the deepest tuck I can. Trying to keep the shoulders on top. You can hold there. We could play with open and close in this position. Once we're comfortable there, I'm going to try extending the legs towards that 7 position. Now that's really taxing. My shoulders want to pop in that direction. I'm trying to push them back in that direction and trying to get the legs down as close as I can to being parallel with the floor. Now, if you don't have the balance yet, we can do the same thing up against the wall. Just be nice and close to the wall. Come down into a tight tuck. That's too close because it knocked me out. There. Squeeze the legs together. Butt touches very lightly. Bring the knees down. Try and hold that position with the shoulders pushing. Rosie. Okay, let's try again. So exactly the same. Butt lightly touching. Tight tuck position. Shoulders on top of the hands. I'm pushing the shoulders in this way. I'm trying not to do this. Trying to keep in that tight tuck. Then if I can, extend the legs. Now, I was too close again, so it spat me out. So I need to move a little bit further away. So you're going to have to find your sweet spot for your mobility. So butt lightly touching, then take the legs away, trying to keep the shoulders out. And then you can move between straight, 7, tuck and 7. And just try and get more control and strength in that position. So it's going to be a combination of mobility, strength, flexibility. Next, we want to train the pathway of the press handstand. So a nice rest is to lay down in this position, but this is also a great way of testing that press pike pathway. So hollow body position, low back pushes into the floor. I'm going to keep the legs straight, slowly come up. Then try and keep the butt on the floor as long as I can. Then try and keep the low back on the floor as long as I can. trying to bring the shins to my face, and then slowly back again. Pushing the low back in now, back to that position. Now that floor version can be very hard, especially for females, because females have a bigger tilt in the pelvis and a higher percentage of body weight in the legs compared to the torso compared to a male. So if needed, you could put the hands down beside like this and push it into the floor as you do that movement, or you could hold on to something. Okay, now the goal is to do the eccentric on our hands. So be in that straight handstand position, pass through your tuck, not your tuck, your pike. So hips, shoulders, trying to fight the position. Go as slow as possible, all the way down till tiptoes touch the floor. Now in reality, if you can't press handstand yet, you're probably not going to be able to go all the way down super slow. That's where we need to use the wall. Now there's a couple of different variations of how much we can use the wall. So the first one is going to be the slightly harder version. It's like the freestanding, but we're really just using the wall for balance. So I'm going to kick up like we did with that 7 position. So there, I'm going to take the butt to the wall slowly, and then try and get low back to the wall, mid back to the wall, upper back to the wall, and then kiss the floor very lightly. So if you're very close to the pike press and you don't need much wall assistance, that's the one to go with. But most people are going to need to use the wall even more to get more support, both from the balance, the strength, and the coordination of the movement. And that's where we're going to have to turn the hands out more. I'm going to push into the wall, nice and strong like we did at the start with that warm up, and then I'm going to slowly take the legs down, pushing the butt into the wall as hard as I can, then the low back into the wall as hard as I can, then the mid back, upper back. Now I came down a little bit too fast there, so that means that I need a little bit more space. So I'm going to take the hands a touch further, and then watch the difference that makes. When I come down now, I can pause more in this position, more is against the wall to counterbalance the feet, and then I land with tiptoes and hold. So for me, I needed to be like 2 hand spaces away from the wall there. Now the risk with this one is we go too far away from the wall with the hands and we're leaning too much like this, which will allow us to do the position, but it's going to be hard on the wrists, and it's also going to be really hard to translate that to the freestanding version. So over time, you want to make sure that you're moving closer and closer to the wall with confidence, conditioning, strength, and a lot of flexibility. Then we can start looking at the concentric. So the easiest way to start playing with the concentric, so the up movement, is to use a partial range. So first the freestanding version. Now I'm going to set up like this, and you can see it's impossible to lift. So I'm going to walk in closer, then I'm going to turn the toes over in that position, and then I see if I can find the sweet spot where I can lift. Now what you got to think about there is the extension that needs to happen. It's not compression. I'm not pulling in. I'm pulling into a point where my toes feel light, but to lift up, I need to extend up in the air. So I'm using the posterior muscles, the things on the back. So exactly the same as if I lift up from here, I don't lift up by pulling in, I lift up by extending up. So tightening or closing all the muscles on the back of the body. You can feel it here. If I do a deadlift, hamstrings and calves, and into the glutes, I'm gonna open up the body by closing those muscles. So it's a funny one to get your head around, but the partial range can really help with that. You might need to go much higher than you actually need to initially understand the movement. Exactly the same if we need wall assist. So there, now you can see I'm doing the movement, not using the wall until the top if my balance isn't so good, and then I can try and balance. Just remember that the box is there, so when you come down, you need to go to the side. You don't want to smash your shins into it. Ideally, do an eccentric back to it if you have that control. We can also do it closer to the wall again, and then use the wall like we did on that eccentric, and I can find where I can go back up. That's just possible there with that hand distance, and I should be able to come back down to it as well. Now I wouldn't only use this exercise because you are only training a partial range of movement, but it's a great way to work the concentric as long as you're also doing work for the eccentric full pathway all the way to the floor, because you don't want to have any big gaps in your training. And then we just keep reducing that height until you make your way all the way down, closer and closer to the floor, and then you'll find you'll just be able to throw that away and do it with that. Ooh, that's a muscled version. See how far the shoulders went forwards. Now there are other drills and exercises you can use, but they're the main ones I tend to use with my clients. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below. If you're after coaching, check out my website, www.paultwyman.com.au. I have my app and offer online coaching, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Thanks guys.